Hey guys, this is Chess Coach Andrew Rankin. Welcome back to the series Just Winning with White. Today I wanted to share with you a game that I played on chess.com against a 2000 rated opponent. Um, there are two themes that really I want to elaborate here. One is when your opponent does really weird things, try and pick a setup that's just really solid and allows you to develop your pieces really fast. Two, when your opponent does really weird things, look to punish it with tactics as fast as possible. But if they don't happen, don't be afraid to just continue with your normal plans because remember they're doing weird stuff, so it's not good and it's going to be punished. The more pieces you have and the better squares your pieces go to. So without further ado, the game begins with d4, e6, very strange move, c4, d6, more strange. So I think this is called like the small center or something like that, but I think that's against the move e4. Against d4, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I just played knight to f3. He played c6. Again, he's clearly just like trying to debate me with these weird moves. So yeah, we just develop our knights before bishops. Queen c7, clearly not a great move, but he obviously just wants to play e5. So I play bishop to f4, which stops that idea. He plays knight b to d7, which is just really strange development. I go e3, and now he breaks with e5. And I don't really want to take, because that allows his knight to come here, or a pawn to come here, and he just gets a nice central pawn. Instead, I want to leave the tension, and that's why I played bishop to g3. And now his setup is very uncomfortable. His setup makes sense if we trade on e5. But if we don't trade, then it's kind of like, well, what's this bishop doing? What's this knight doing? Where's he going? The queen? Okay, what's she doing? And you'll see that I really like my bishop on g3, which x-rays the queen. I emphasize x-rays all the time because they just create so many amazing tactical opportunities. So my opponent plays h6, which is like, bro, what are you doing? So I continue with bishop e2, just preparing to castle. Notice I don't want to put the bishop on d3 because then the move e4 is always really annoying. For example, d5, e4, and comes with too many tempos, too many threats, and I think black is in trouble. So he goes knight to f6, and I think the move knight to h5 is just really annoying, so that's why I play the move h3. So now all my pieces have plenty of good squares. They're focused on the middle. My setup is nice and solid. You notice against anything weird, I end up with this pseudo... Sorry, the bishop went to f4 and the knights go here. So I end up with this pseudo... London setup, only instead of putting my bishop on d3 because he's clearly preparing the move e4, I put the bishop on e2. So he once again pushes another pawn to the 6th rank, which serves almost no purpose. I play queen to c2, and I just want to cover the e4 square. So now I have my knight and my queen covering this, so that if he ever pushes, he's got to be really careful that I don't just chop it off. Or if he pushes it prematurely, even if he has enough defenders, the knight drops back to d2, adds another attacker, and if he defends it with d5, we take, and then the knight and queen do a really nice job, and the c file will open up, and I really like coordinating my pieces on the c7 square and on the c file. So he just continues with bishop to e7, and again, like I said, when your opponent's playing poor chess, you always got to look for tactical opportunities, and that's why I like the bishop back on g3. So the bishop here is lined up with the queen, and this is actually a really common tactic that occurs in the King's Indian defense if you play the Smyslov/Petrosian system, which is what I play, and that's the move c5. So I knew this was a tactic in that situation. Now the best move here is to take on d4, in which I case take back, and now he can't push because he loses the queen, and he can't take because he loses the queen, so he ends up with just this really uncomfortable situation, probably castles. I'll put the pieces on the d file. The knight will reroute this way and put extra pressure on d6, and it'll just be very uncomfortable for black. But instead, my opponent played d takes c5, which is just a terrible move. So now we have d takes e5, winning a tempo on the knight. The knight correctly goes to h5. And you might be thinking, why not push e6? Because then knight takes bishop, pawn takes knight check, bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes on b3, and white is better here, but it's only plus 1.7. Also, he gets this check. His queen is very active. This pawn might fall. I mean, I have to play king f1. This rook is always going to be stuck, and he does end up with the bishop pair, and he can just castle freely. I think this position is quite comfortable for black. So that's why I just decided to drop the bishop back. And I correctly evaluated this position as much better for white. And the reason is because the move e6 is still a huge threat. So he decides to move the queen. That way e6 doesn't simply just win a piece because it double attacks the queen and the knight. But we still just throw e6 at his face. And let me go over a couple of variations, because I actually realized over the board that if he takes and I play queen to g6 check and he moves here, I don't actually want to take the knight, because then he has queen takes b2. For example, queen takes knight, queen takes b2, castles, queen takes knight, and I don't think white actually achieved a whole lot. We lost 2 pawns, but we got a weak king. So it's still a long game to play. Instead, actually, and I didn't see this in the game, but we didn't go down this variation anyway. And the move here is actually knight to e5. And this is very instructional because it seems very counterintuitive, because we trade off a lot of attackers. We allow his knight to come back, and it looks like his king is super safe. Then we trade off the bishop, only because after bishop to h5, it's unstoppable mate. He can't stop mate on e8 or f7 because he has 2 mate threats, and there's no way that you can stop both of them. So this was just amazing. I did not realize that this threat existed, but it's good to know, because if this ever happens in the future, it's really important to know that you should calculate your lines really far, because there might be more and more resources even after you trade pieces. For example, normally if I was calculating and I saw all those trades of pieces, I would say, like, no, you trade off too much attacking material. Of course there's nothing, but there is something at the end of the rainbow. So instead my opponent plays knight d to f6 here, and I think this just opens up way too many tactical chances for me. So I took the pawn, he takes with the king, and now we just castle. Just play nice and safe. That way my queen is free to come over here, because if he ever takes the pawn, it's not a double attack. He's only attacking the knight. So my opponent plays rook to f8, and he's just planning on castling by hand. And now we have the knight to e5 move. And this check is really annoying, because you'll see that his light squares around his king are super weak. So he puts the king on g8, and now we give this fork, forcing the rook to go to e8. And now you'll see that we're starting to cover almost all the squares around his king. Notice that this is always indirectly covered by the queen. And so really we just need to cover this square and also give check to the king. So of course the move is bishop to c4 check, and he has to block with the knight. So we play knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, and now he can block with the bishop. And if I remember right, the computer has some, oh yeah, so there's a really nice move here. So I'm going to pause my video and see if you guys can find the winning shot for white here that just completely crushes black. All right. I didn't find this in the game. In the game, I played queen to c4, but the move is bishop c7. And the queen has nowhere that she can go that guards the bishop. And if she takes the bishop on c7, then bishop takes bishop check. King goes here. Knight f8. Notice the king can't go here attacking because he's guarded. He has to go here, and then queen to h7 is checkmate. So that's a very nice sequence there, which means bishop to c7 wins the queen. He has to take this bishop, and then we take his queen. So bishop c7. I'd like to think that I might find that move over the board, simply because of the extreme tactical nature of the position. But since this was just a rapid game, I was looking to play quite quickly, and I just played queen to c4. And this is really the wrong move. I think he should really just move the bishop and increase his defender of the knight. But instead he took, and now he's just busted, because after he moves here, we can simply take. He moved the knight away, because if he took our knight on e7, then we would take his knight on h5. And it looks like I'm in a little bit of trouble because my queen is hanging and my knight is hanging, but of course we have queen to d3 check. The king moves back, and then I just move the knight to g6, giving a nice check. King goes there, and then queen to b3 check forces the queen trade. And I'll show you guys the end of the game. I think there's only about 6 moves left. Yeah. So he brings the king over, attacking my knight. I drop the knight back to f4. He centralizes the rook. I challenge the open file. He correctly realizes trades are not in his best favor, but I think just leaving the rook here is probably best. I don't want to trade because then he gets the open file. Instead, I would just play a move like rook c1, and I can't really take the pawn because then my rook hangs, so I think he should just leave the rook here and maybe improve the knight somehow. Instead, he moves away, and now I play rook a to c1. He plays the move pawn to b6, defending his weak c5 pawn. But now my knight starts to jump into the game, tickles the b6 pawn, causing his rook to slide. Oh no, his knight came back, that's right. But now we have this nice fork of the rook and the a6 pawn, and he blunders. He plays rook to g8, which makes no sense to me, and we took the knight, and the game ends right there. Yeah, so I was actually taking notes on why my opponents lose and whether it's more tactical or positional. And I think in the opening, my opponent definitely made a lot of positional weaknesses, but he definitely lost because of tactics. So I'd say it was about 25% position, 75% tactics. But you notice that once the initial tactic, which was this c4, no, it was c5. I think I'll move 11. Yeah, this c5 pawn break, sort of that one tactical shot, undermining his positional weaknesses, led to, I think, his position to crumble. And once you get sort of one simple tactic, I think your opponents will just completely collapse after that. So I'd say 25% positional mistakes, probably 50% tactical mistakes, but then there's an extra 25% element, which is probably psychological. And that's as soon as your opponent gains some sort of edge against you or gets some sort of move that you didn't see coming and really hits you hard. That was really his unraveling and his undoing. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I thought it was a really cool game and I wanted to share it with you. So tell me what you think, and I'll catch you later. Thanks. Bye.